Really bad intro music, courtesy of yours truly, Johnny Slivers, here at the EDH Study Hall on the Cackling Carnarium, continuing my trek through the beta set. Picking up where we kind of left off. We left off on Time Walk and talking about why it's banned in EDH and how busted it actually is. And now we're moving on to Tranquility. The next card in the next card in the list. It's I'm not drinking whiskey tonight. It's Long Trail Ale. That's what's going on. Anyway, Tranquility's been around for a bit. It got reprints up through 7th edition, Sword and Invasion, Radiant Masks. It's a sorcery for 2 and a green. It destroys all enchantments. And that's like a Wrath for enchantments in EDH is okay. It's okay. I think artifacts are a little better. Ultimately, like anything that could Wrath, like a Shatterstorm would Wrath out the would be a Wrath for artifacts, but this is not happening here. This is enchantments. There are plenty of builds that are counting on them, but I think it's a little too narrow. I think in general, you'll find EDH decks will definitely have artifacts in them as far as mana rocks go, so that's where you want something that could do a board wipe on artifacts, but enchantments, well, you know what? Let's humor the numbers. Let's see what Tranquility is doing on EDH Rec. Tranquility, Tranquil Cove. There we go. It shows up in 196 decks. I'm not terribly surprised at that, just because it was destroy. Yeah, it's a little narrow on its focus. So unless you know you are in a meta where everyone's playing enchantments matter EDH decks, I would pass on Tranquility and find something better to do with it. That's right. Okay, so after Tranquility, we it's hard to follow up the last episode because we got into the Time Walk, Time Twister, Time Vaults of the set, some of the big power that Beta had to offer. So we're kind of getting into some duds, except for Tropical Island. That's not a dud. Tropical Island, again, blanket statement. Original dual lands, if you got them, play them. Unless you maybe are concerned about the fact that they are super expensive. Tropical Island being a little pricier. This one's breaking $250. International editions and collector's editions aren't gonna run you as much. You can get revised ones for about $260, but this one is the basic or the dual land that comes in untapped and taps with no penalty for blue or green. Going on to after Tropical Island, we have Tsunami. All islands in play are destroyed. Saw its last printing in 5th edition. And it's what is that? Uncommon. So it's an uncommon card. It's 3 and a green for sorcery to destroy all islands. If this one's, you see, the thing is, even though yes, blue can be very popular in EDH, and you have a lot of commanders that are going to run blue, unless it's mono blue, and this would wipe. There are some mono blue decks that are super annoying. Of course, they'll probably counter this. This is kind of a gamble. So I mean, even if you're in blended colors that happen to be running blue, or your opponents are running something that has blue, but it's with other components, not everything they're using for mana sources is going to be islands, and that's the downside. This is only going to wipe one kind of basic land type. It's a very relevant land type, but you know what? I'm not even going to trust myself on that one either. Who knows? Let's see what happens with Tsunami. I'm pretty sure it's low. Tsunami. 102 decks. So yes, not a lot of decks brew in this. It's one of those, you got to have a very specific meta. You have to know you're playing against a bunch of people who are going mono blue shenanigans across the board, and you just need to wipe them off the face of the board state. Tundra, one of the other dual lands. This one again in the kind of the 270s. About 275-ish, 277. The dual land that comes in for untapped with blue and white as the mana sources, no penalties. Same as I said for other dual lands in the past. Tunnel, I'm kind of moving here along at a good clip here. All right, on to Tunnel. After Tundra is Tunnel. Tunnel is destroy one wall, target wall cannot be regenerated. And this didn't get past 4th edition for good reason, because, I mean, is a dead card. Basically, unless you're playing draft, or unless you're playing against an Arcades strategist deck, and even then, it really, this is bury target wall is not really a relevant removal spell, so I say no. I'm not even gonna look at the stats. Don't play Tunnel. You've got better things to do with that mana. All right. After Tunnel, we move on to Twiddle. Twiddle. Twiddle was one of those cards where, what was it? It was unlimited, but it wasn't in revised. They brought it back for 4th edition, and it was, I don't know why this was a thing. I mean, instant speed, tap or untap target land, artifact, or creature. It's a fun way to manipulate the board state at instant speed. Some combat tricks are a possibility, but there's just better ways to get that effect in EDH. So there's a reason it's a cheap card. It's a common. It got printed plenty of times, and honestly, it's kind of I think there's other abilities even that will do this, but give you a card draw. They'll get something out of it. So this one, no, even though being an instant, it is something you can put on an Ice Crown Scepter, but there are better things to put on Ice Crown Scepter if you're going to be playing that card. So I would pass on Twiddle personally. And after Twiddle, we've got Two-Headed Giant. Two-Headed Giant, this guy is a 4/4 for 4 and a red mana. It's Summon Giant, and we want to check Scryfall to see, especially when it comes to some of these old cards where they didn't get printings after, say, Unlimited or Revised, then they didn't have a chance to have the Oracle text really updated. Then I think it's always good to check in here with Scryfall or a Gatherer to make sure the Oracle text is up to speed. And they really streamlined it because the original printing looked kind of funky. All right, so Two-Headed Giant of four East. Two-Headed Giant of 4 East can block an additional creature each combat, which was a weird ability in red, and it had trample too. That's another thing. Like, trample it over the years kind of became more of a green thing, but in the earliest sets they had a whole things were mixed matched. There wasn't quite. Yeah, it was just like the early days of R&D. We had put things in colors that maybe didn't belong there. The ability for a red creature to block 2 was just kind of, I don't know. Over the years, it just seemed not on flavor for them. But it's pretty cool to have something that can block 2 creatures. But it's just, I think this is, again, I don't think it's strong enough for the casting cost for what it does. For playing in EDH, I think you've got better options. I don't think it's going to have high numbers here. So, oh my god. I think this is the only one I've seen that only has one deck reporting it actually being brewed with this card. All right. So, my hunch was correct. It was not really something you go pursuing for an EDH brew. Neat old-looking card, but that's about it. Underground Sea. Holy kerchmoly. All right. So the Underground Sea is one of the dual lands that had the biggest spike when it came to prices. I think this was actually breaking $700 at one point for revised, maybe. I'd have to go to MTG stocks. It was insane. Like, it was insane how high the price had gotten. So let's go see what that did. So the Underground Sea. What was the peak? There were some crazy spikes. What is that? That's an alpha. Let's go look at something that's not quite as expensive. Do they have the other versions here? Let's go Unlimited Revised Edition. Is that revised? Okay, so the revised edition. Okay, so yeah, the revised version did in fact break $800 at one point, and that was back in, what is this saying? June 11th, 2018. I remember that year was like the buyouts for the reserve list were just crazy insane. It's tempered down a bit. Not far. Like, prior to that spike, it was hovering this little sweet spot, like the 350, 325 range. And it is calming back down significantly from its peak, but it's not quite calmed down enough. I think if it got under 500, it's probably, that might be the floor. If it dips under 500, I can't see it going much further than that, like in that 500 range. But yeah, it's I think the big thing driving that price, I don't recall the deck, is definitely something in there's like a bunch of vintage and legacy decks that count on this particular land. It's a key component for some combos. So it's that's part of what's driving that price. If you have this, I don't know, pay off a month of your rent with it. It's this is one of those dual lands you're getting to this price range. It's like, do you really want to keep that in your EDH deck, or do you want to actually liquidate that for real cash and make it do some work for you in the real world? And I think that's what I'm, that would be my advice on Underground Sea. The others that are in that 200 range, I'm a little more inclined to maybe use them. But if you're playing something, especially in like casual, you can make up your own proxies. If you're playing casual, not competitive, or not, if your group is okay with it, you can make proxies to kind of be a placeholder while you work towards achieving something like this. This is a crazy high price. But yeah, that is, I think, I don't know if that's the last dual land we're going to see in the set. I think I'm going to see that might be it. Going to Unholy Strength. This is an enchantment for 1 black, and it's an enchant creature. It's Nora. Enchanted creature gets +2/+1. Pretty basic buff. Of the, like, between Holy and Unholy Strength, the Unholy Strength was considered the better enchantment just because it gave more power, did more damage. So that was a great way to go. But as far as EDH, yeah, it doesn't do enough. And this fun fact, the pentagram that was shown in the original art drew up a lot of controversy back in the 90s. And I believe, where was it? They took it out of 4th edition. I think the last set that had this original art was revised. And then after a lot of people saw that and were like, oh no, magic is the work of the devil. And they freaked out, and the Wizards decided, yep, this is not worth it. Not worth our time. And in 4th edition, they simply got rid of the pentagram, and then they went further down the line. I think, where did they start putting new art in here? Like 7th edition had new art. I wonder if they had it. I don't even see it. Where is the rest of it? I guess they pulled it out for 5th edition and 6th edition. Oh, there, 5th edition. What did 5th edition have? And 5th edition had this actually funky, like, heavy metal zombie playing the drums with femurs here. he's like just going at it. So this is where they started, like, probably when they went to their art direction, they were like, okay, let's get away from the religious symbols of any kind that's relevant in the real world, and let's just find other avenues. And this was a great start right here. Actually, this is pretty cool. This 5th edition art on Holy Strength is pretty cool. And they had other iterations down the road, and they just had all these other options. But as far as EDH goes, don't play it unless you've got a deck unless you're playing a pants deck, an enchantment deck that happens to be in black, and you're trying to run that game. I'd say pass on the Unholy Strength, because you've got better ways to buff. Let's see. After Unholy Strength, we've got Unsummon. This isn't bad. Blue doesn't get a lot of removal. 1 blue for an instant, return target creature to its owner's hand. This is the use behind this is you either bounce something that somebody juiced up to get ready for an attack, or during an attack, and just like bloop, and it goes away. Or you can salvage one of your own creatures that's maybe going to get got by your opponent, and you don't want to lose that creature. And rather than lose it altogether, you want to put it back into your hand. Then Unsummon then's worth considering. But even then, there's still this original ability of what it does can be done with other cards. So it's been repeated over the years. There's other ways to do this, and if you need a filler, Unsummon's fine. But ultimately, when you are tuning your deck, this is going to be one of the ones that's just easily cut for something that does the job better and with more benefit. So neat idea, fun card, good combat trick if you're going to, like, kind of salvage your own card to keep it from dying. But I would go ahead and say pass. The Uthden Troll, one of the original trolls, but in red. And yeah, Uthden Troll was a 2/2 for 2 in a red. And the only reason it's not a gray ogre is because you can regenerate it for 1 red. And even then, it's still, there's better trolls, honestly. in Magic the Gathering, in the cards, there are definitely better trolls. This is not one of them. So I would say Yeah, passed on Uthden Troll. Don't worry about it. There's better things to do with that mana in EDH. I think we'll wrap up on the next one. This is a good one to finish up on. No, not Enchantress. We'll finish up on Vesuvian Doppelganger. Just hang on a second. Hang on a second. There we go. So, Returned Enchantress. This one definitely has a home, I believe. And I want to say it saw a nice. This was like a 25-cent card for the longest time. And I think Commander 18 came out. And even before Commander 18, more people were kind of digging around for strategies that they could kind of branch out with, and Enchantments Matters became a strategy that was worth considering. And as the years have gone on, more cards have come along that make it a more viable strategy. And in the Commander 2018 set, the Bant deck, where Enchantments Act did matter, and we got the commander, the Planeswalker commander that also did the thing with masks and all that stuff. And we've got I think it was Tuvasa is another one, and there's just all these enchantment ready commanders that made this a much more viable card to be using in an EDH deck. So what is it? Why don't I talk about it? Okay, stop dragging it out, Johnny. All right, so the Enchantress costs 1 and 2 green. It is Summon Enchantress. It's a 0/2, but the ability is, let's go to the newest possible version here. Whenever you play an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. So this is part of that draw engine for the Enchantment Matters decks. I think it is, trying to remember, is it Mesa Enchantress? There's a couple of them. There's Argothian Enchantress. There's another Enchantress. There's a couple cards that draw you cards when you cast enchantments, and we'll eventually in time get to those. But this is the original. And when those enchantment decks started coming up and becoming more popular and more viable, we did start seeing an increase in the price of this card. I don't know. I'm curious if it saw. I feel like there was like a good spike that it went through. I might be wrong on that. Hang on. Returned Enchantress. All right. So pricing, where did it happen? Yeah, it did see some. They did see a spike. For the longest time, these were 50-cent cards. You find them in the bulk bins. Nobody wanted them. Just basically, it was a dud card because people were like, oh, it just wasn't strong before the 20. Let's see, was that spike in probably the summer of 2018? No, it was before that. I saw that spike February of this year. So this is long after the 2018s actually hit. So I'm wondering what was going on there. There must have been, as people started combing through the list of cards that were available to enhance those decks, it must have taken them. That's the kind of a lag time, unless it was something else that drove that price up. I'm not sure. I'm fuzzy on exactly what was driving the prices at that point. But the Returned Enchantress, if you are an Enchantments Matter build and you're in green, this is a good card, especially if you're like counting on this ability. If you need repeatable options for this ability, then you go ahead and get the Returned Enchantress so you can draw more cards. I even want to see what it's doing on EDH Rec. Let's take a look. So it climbed up to 3%. That must be the thing that happened. It's got to be those decks that drove it. Yeah, 3,800 card decks are showing it in use, and definitely going to be for those enchantment decks. I'm sure of it. So yeah, Returned Enchantress, totally playable. Very specific kind of strategy that you're going to be building around with it, but it's a good card. The O2 body is still a bit fragile. The 2 toughness is still easy to kill, but not nearly as easy to kill as a 0/1, which is something you will run into from time to time. So yeah, the toughness is enough to make it worth it to The upside is enough to make it worth it. The casting cost is low enough. It's a decent card. It fits the bill for the right strategy. I'd say if you're in an enchantment spend or brewing mood, this is a card you definitely want to get your hands on. And an old school version would just look cool. And we will wrap up here. Vesuvan Doppelganger. Last saw it's printing in revised. The cheapest copies you'll find are in the $10 to $12 range. And I don't believe if it made it to revise, I don't know if that could possibly be reserve list. Let's go see. Let's go see what I think MTG Stocks will show us that. Souvent. What's here I am with my dead air trying to get my spelling right. Vesuvan VS UV and there. Okay. So the question we're looking for, is it reserve list? It is. Okay. So the reserve list, there's a fun little fact right there. I thought for some reason reserve list was something that kicked right because reserve list dual lands, right? So reserve list kicked off after Chronicles. Chronicles was printed after revised. So stuff that you see in revised had been printed prior to a reserve list, and that's when they decided that this card warranted being put on a reserve list. And shebang, there you go. I wonder, let's just reminisce on when we missed our opportunity for a decent price on this card. Revised edition right here. And for the longest time, it was, oh my God, for the longest time, the Doppelganger was like $3.50. And then it saw that spike around Dominaria, busted up to almost $20. And now it's kind of tempered down into that $12, $13 range. It's a super good clone. Ultimately, when you get down to the brass tacks, it's a long, wordy kind. It's got a wall of text there. So let me go ahead and butcher the spelling one more time. So the way the card works is you may have this Hooven Doppelganger enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it doesn't copy that creature's color. And it has at the beginning of your upkeep, you may have this creature become a copy of target creature, except it doesn't copy that creature's color and has this ability. So every upkeep, it can keep changing. And the wording, this is important. I think this other part is also important. Comes into play when the Doppelganger enters the battlefield. When you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it doesn't copy that creature's color. And that's the thing. When it enters the battlefield, it's not targeting. So it gets around hexproof. It gets around shroud abilities. That's huge. When you're able to actually take Vesuvan Doppelganger, be like, haha, I'm going to copy your progenitors. They're like, no, you can't do that. It's got not in target. That's dirty pool. So this is a great one to wrap up the episode on. Vesuvan Doppelganger is just the premier clone that you could hope for. It's got a fixed cost. It's 5 mana. It's 3 and 2 blue. That's a 0/0 shapeshifter. And just that the funny part is it's funny how the ability, what is that? So except it has at the beginning of your upkeep, you may have this creature become a copy of target creature. So once it's on the battlefield and it does that change, like during your upkeep, you may change it to another creature on the battlefield. That's when it starts targeting. But when it enters the battlefield, there's no targeting. And that's pretty amazing because in blue, you've got plenty of ways to bounce your creatures back to your hand. If you absolutely need to get a copy of something that's in play and you can't get around the fact that it has hexproof or whatever reason. It's protection from blue. It's a progenitus. Oh my God. Well, just bounce this one and just re-enter the battlefield as that one creature that you want to copy but couldn't. And that's what makes this the awesome clone. There are clones out there, I think, when they enter the battlefield, they have to target. But this is pretty sweet. So I think it's worth the $12, honestly. Even though the best opportunity to get them was years ago when it was floating around that $3 to $4 range. Yeah, it's not. You're not gonna get. It's not gonna happen again. It's probably gonna stay at that $10 or better because EDH is blowing up. It's the set. It's the format to play. And yeah, so there it is. So we're gonna wrap it up on that. I hope you enjoyed that. Sorry about the stumbling and bumbling and the dead air. If you please leave a comment in the videos section below for the comments. Like, subscribe if you so feel inclined. But more importantly, you can find me on Twitter at Johnny Slivers. And I hope this session was of some use to you. And until next time, may your top decks be epic.